5 miles west of Boise. 2 people are dead, including the suspected gunman. 3 others injured. Motive not clear. America is listening to Fox News.
Yikes, are those Christmas bills coming in? Wait, hold on, that was last month. Now it's this month. But by popular demand, we're extending our New Year's solution 4.65% personal loan through February. Money for whatever you want at 4.65% APR from Bank Pacific. We're still celebrating.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal credit opportunity lender as low as 4.65%. Conditions apply.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in the Grand Plaza Hotel Tumon is now serving your favorite daily specials. Come one, come all. Enjoy your Monday with that savory cut and pica. Your Tuesday with your one and only candied salmon. Stroll by on Wednesday to try that local style oxtail kadu. Or Thursday if you're feeling that pan crisp pork belly served over roasted sweet potato mash. And don't forget that miso yaki black cod with garlic mashed potatoes on Friday. Busy at work and still want your fix? Call 969-2652 for your takeout order.
The third day of deliberations in Harvey Weinstein's New York rape trial fails to produce a verdict. The jury has asked to rehear the testimony of actress Annabelle Sciorra. She claims she was raped by Weinstein in the mid-1990s. He claims any sexual contact was consensual. Federal drug agents targeting several cities identified as distribution hubs for crystal meth.
The DEA says Operation Crystal Shield targets meth transportation hubs to disrupt the supply chain and intercept the drug before it spreads to communities across the nation. The agency identifying 8 cities, including Atlanta, Dallas, and Los Angeles, as hubs where meth arrives in bulk from Mexico for distribution. Authorities say almost all meth consumed in the U.S. comes from Mexico because a federal law regulating sales of over-the-counter drugs which can be used to make it largely eliminated domestic production. DEA seizures of meth in the U.S. increased by a whopping 127% between fiscal years 2017 and 2019. Steve Rappaport, Fox News.
A snowstorm is bearing down on parts of Virginia and North Carolina.
I think in general the snowfall totals are going to be from 2 to 6 inches. It's still snowing in eastern North Carolina and southeast Virginia.
That's meteorologist Greg Dial of the National Weather Service Storm Prediction Center. A winter storm warning is posted into the heart of Friday morning's rush hour. Maybe a bad flu season for the kids, but early signs suggest the flu vaccine is working. Estimates released Thursday by the Centers for Disease Control say for kids, the flu vaccine has been more than 50% effective in preventing flu illnesses severe enough to send someone to the doctor's office. The body of a second firefighter lost in a fire at the Portersville, California Public Library earlier this week has now been found. 2 13-year-old boys charged with arson and manslaughter for allegedly starting that fire. A death row inmate has died in Tennessee's electric chair. Nicholas Sutton had been condemned for fatally stabbing a child rapist in prison. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Hafa-day. This is Congressman Michael Nicholas. Our veterans deserve the best, and I'm working hard to make sure they receive what they earned defending our freedom. If you need help receiving the benefits you earned from the VA or the Defense Department, please call my office at 475-6453 or go online at stnicholas.house.gov. On behalf of a grateful community, thank you for your service.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael Nicholas.
February 27th, it's the last call for leadership.
If you want to add value to people, you have to know and relate to what other people value. You see, great leaders are first of all listeners, and then they're learners, and then they're leaders.
The voice of John C. Maxwell, who leads a team of world-class speakers on the last chance to see the Live to Lead conference in November. Over 300 leaders and future leaders experienced a day full of big ideas, fun, and high-level motivation. For those who couldn't make it, we're doing it again. Registration closes soon. Get the details at GuamTraining.com. Live to Lead is brought to you by Atkins Kroll, Guam's #1 car dealership. Also by Personal Finance Center and the Guam Chamber of Commerce. Energize your team. Join the Guam Live to Lead conference today.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Good afternoon, and the good ship Tall Tales is once again at sea. Starting out with a responsive reading of the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution, what better way could there be to start a talk show than by reading the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution? The intro to a conservative, constitutionally based, interactive radio talk show that is set up to allow for audience participation. You can call us here at 888-TALK, 888-8255. You can log on to Tall Tales on Facebook. You can post a comment on Facebook. Pretty good chance I'll read it. I might even make something out of it on the air. I might even build some discussion around it. However you decide to enjoy Tall Tales, you got a couple hours ahead of some really educational, enlightening, exciting talk radio that we always kick off with Zemi. Zemi Cudney, my backwards play on word. We have a little contest here to see when the Real Joe Cruz will key up the intro to Zemi Cudney.
I was waiting for the glint in your eye. When I saw that, that's when I knew.
And he knew exactly when to start that music. So Zemi Cudney, we go through the editorial or what appears on the editorial pages of our two daily newspapers. I am unmercifully critical of one of the newspapers because they never run local editorials. They cadge some stuff from USA Today or Gannett News Service or something like that. And then I turn my attention to the Guam Daily Post, which day in, day out produces some pretty good editorials. Topical, edgy, fact-based, theoretical, editorials that capture your attention and wind up with a call to action, unlike the Daily News. And a good example of what I'm talking about. Today, the Daily News has something, they didn't even attribute it. I guess they were so proud of it, they didn't even run an attribution at the end of it. But it's common ground. Put a price on carbon pollution. Refund proceeds to consumers. Yeah, we'll do that. And when it comes to the Post, of course, is zeroing in on one of our late-breaking problems here, our tourist industry as it is affected by the coronavirus. The title of today's editorial is Our Tourist Industry Needs Help. And I can't resist here. And for sure, they're not going to get it from our governor. Yeah. The Guam Visitors Bureau has provided an update that more than 15,000 tourists have canceled their Guam trips, resulting in an estimated collective revenue loss of more than $9 million. The disease caused by the novel coronavirus, or COVID-19, has struck fear among many would-be travelers across the globe, most profoundly in Asia, where Guam's tourists primarily come from. Many would-be passengers across the globe are staying home, scared of getting infected by the deadly virus. This latest scare has again exposed the vulnerability of our island's reliance on tourism as one of its two main economic drivers, the second being military defense spending. The tourism downturn is a reminder of the decrease in tourist arrivals during the outbreak of severe acute respiratory syndrome, or SARS, in 2003. Beyond the numbers, we're now beginning to see the real impact on small businesses that create and sustain jobs. We're also seeing that employees in these businesses may have to get smaller paychecks because they will be called to work less often, if at all. For some of the small business owners we talked to, the state of their business was dramatically slowed. At a popular Tumon restaurant, its owner said 45 to 60 people usually dine in after 2 p.m., depending on the day. During lunchtime Wednesday, the business serviced only 3 tables. Later in the afternoon, the place was empty when the Guam Daily Post checked. To cope, the restaurant has temporarily reduced the number of people being called to work. That means paychecks for families with reduced hours will shrink. In another example, a personal watercraft rental business that averages 40 customers per day saw only 16 on Thursday. More than a dozen South Korean tourists are usually seen patronizing the business nearly every day, its manager said. But on Thursday, there were only 2 South Korean customers at the place that rents out jet skis. At a marine park, which sees up to 180,000 tourists a year, recent weeks have been slow. The decrease in customers has been estimated at around 40%. At AB Wonpad Airport, Korea-based airlines have pared down their Guam flights. Nearly 60 flights have been cut from these airlines' regular services. Korean Air, Jeju Air, and Jen Air still fly to Guam, but they have reduced the frequency of their flights. In light of these developments, our tourist industry and more than 21,000 who work in this industry are in for tougher times. Government of Guam officials need to get together to figure out a way to extend a helping hand. Maybe a rollback on taxes or some form of employee or small business assistance program can be discussed. The tourist industry is asking for help. Will GovGuam listen and act? Well, a fact-based editorial for sure. What the editorial did was just pluck some items from their very recent news stories. I am not going to award the Blue Star to the Post today. I recognize that the tourist industry is in bad shape, or not in bad shape, but faces a troublesome future. However, it's not the government of Guam's job to extend a helping hand to business. At least not as I understand a helping hand. Of course, I have a lot of trouble with the extension of hands anyhow. I've been pretty critical of those who would say, we reached out to the Department of Public Works, but they didn't answer the phone. So extending a helping hand, what exactly does extending a helping hand mean? To me, it connotes charity. We extended a helping hand to the street person who said all he wanted was enough for a cup of coffee. So we took him into the store and bought him a 6-pack. We extended a helping hand. But it's not the government's job to extend a helping hand to business. If there's anything the government of Guam can do, it's get the heck out of the way. Now we increased our gross receipts tax by 25%. This was supposed to be an emergency measure brought about by Trump's tax cuts, that evil Trump. What a horrible thing for him to do to the people, cutting their taxes. And he did it without we didn't even get to ask. He didn't even ask us. It's just another unfunded federal mandate, cutting our taxes without asking us. But the 25% increase was supposed to be temporary. But when the sunset, it had a built-in sunset. When the sunset came, it was removed, and the rap was, we'll address it in the next budget. Well, guess what? There's no tax relief in this budget that they're playing with right now. Our governor really extended a helping hand to business when she was queried about when she thought that extra 25% could repealed. And when she was asked how long that tax should stay in place, she said, forever. Forever. So she doesn't want that tax to go away. Well, why would you want to be governor if you didn't have a lot of money that you could use to endear yourself to the population? The heck with those business people. They'll get by somehow or other. So that's something that the government could do. They could reduce that gross receipts tax. Well, yeah, but if we did, we wouldn't be able to continue to provide all of the government services that we're providing right now. You know, like our state-of-the-art hospital and our super smooth highways and our overmanned police department and our model correctional facility. Yeah, in other words, Lou, cut the gross receipts tax and cut the size of the government. That's what you could do, because no one is saying, oh, this coronavirus is bad. It's going to hurt our tourist industry, the poor government employees, because everybody's sitting back saying, oh, I work for the government. I don't care about coronavirus. I get paid every 2 weeks, no matter what. So that's what you could do, and that's what you could suggest, Guam Daily Post. And then, of course, the Chamber of Commerce asked for a postponement of the effective date of the increase in minimum wage. Minimum wage is supposed to go up 50 cents on the 1st of March. And, you know, the first answer out of the governor's mouth was the right answer, and it was enough. All she had to say was, I don't have the authority to change the effective date of that statute by executive order. That's not the way the government works. Period. Thank you for asking. But she didn't do that. She had to kind of rub it in. I'll get to that when I get to the card here. It's an item on the card, Lou versus Christine Boleto. I'll pick that up when I get there. The tourist industry is asking for help. Will GovGuam listen and act? Well, the tourist industry has asked, at least the chamber has asked, for a postponement of the minimum wage. I don't know that GHRA or the chamber have once again said, Governor Leon Guerrero, roll back that tax, borrowing a page from Ronald Reagan's book. But anyhow, Guam Daily Post, the best thing that the government can do for the business community is just stay the hell out of the way. That's the best thing they can do for it. I shudder to think of what could happen if the government of Guam decided that it would help the business community, some form of employee or small business assistance program. No, please, no. No. That's, you know, you American history buffs would remember Franklin Delano Roosevelt. That was his idea, too. He came along with the National Recovery Administration, you know, to lessen competition, decrease the supply, and he basically took over the economy until a real Supreme Court stopped him from doing it. I don't want to see something, I don't want to see this government get involved in something like that. Employee assistance programs or small business assistance programs. So Guam Post, you get a lot of blue stars. You have right now 175 blue stars, but you're not going to get one today. Okay, so from there, I got a post on the Second Amendment here. Let me pick that up. Are gun rights supporters misinterpreting the Second Amendment? Let's see, did that go away? Yeah, it did. Unfortunately. As soon as it pops back up on the screen, I'll come back to that poster. They show up on my screen, and then they come back and go away, and then they come back again in the comments section, and there's a brief period of time when they're not available to me. So I'm going to go into the card, and I'll keep my the corner of my eye open for that post. Okay, so today on the card, the last program we talked about Bavakwa and the FestPac deniers, and I'm not going to go into it again, except to label myself as a FestPac denier. Bavakwa wrote another one of his columns telling us what a wonderful thing that FestPac was, and that we shouldn't use the people who using FestPac and cultural artists as a punching bag doesn't ensure less waste or incompetence in the government. All it does is distract. Well, that's my job, Michael Bavakwa, to stop the distraction, and FestPac is a distraction. You know, almost everybody that I hear talk about it are saying, why are we spending $350,000 to send 100 people to Hawaii when we have such racking financial problems here on the island? It's not a good use of our money. But then Michael Bavakwa and his boss, Senator Kelly Marsh Titano, have taken up column inch after column inch telling us how lucky we are that our government has decided to send 100 people to Honolulu for FestPac for only $350,000. And what a wonderful thing it is to preserve the culture, and on and on and on. So I just want to make it clear that I am a FestPac denier. I don't know if, what do you think, Real Joe Cruz? T-shirts, coffee cups?
Sure.
Beer can sleeves?
Yeah, even refrigerator magnets. One for Ray.
Yeah.
He loves those.
Yeah. Something like maybe a circle, you know, the international traffic signal with FestPac inside and the line draws through it. I'm a FestPac denier. Well, probably could make a lot more money doing that than I can as the host of Tall Tales, but I'll take that one under advisement. Next on the card is Raging Lee. I have to, once again, explain like I do as each time I mention the name of Kelly Marsh Titano. Senator Lee's name is Regine with a strong accent mark over the E, meaning that the stress is put on the first syllable, not the last. Now, I would, if left to my own devices, pronounce that name Regine, but that would be wrong. And I certainly don't want to be wrong in the way I pronounce the name of a senator, even if it's a hard name that ends in Titano. So I have to put the stress on the first syllable in Senator Lee's name. So Raging Lee is a little bit difficult. So how about just Raging Lee? Would that work, Real Joe Cruz?
That would be fine, sir.
Yeah, okay. So for Tall Tales purposes, that would be the name of Senator Raging Lee. So we've got Raging Lee versus Jim Moylan. Lee to Moylan, travel justification already on the books. A call for senators and staff to fully justify their off-island travel has sparked a terse rebuttal from Rules Committee Chairman Raging Lee. Jim Moylan wants travelers to explain how their taxpayer-funded trips actually benefit the island. Lee's response? I agree with him on some of the new recommendations. Actually, those are already enshrined in public law, and it's part of the Budget Act. Moylan explains his resolution to amend the legislature's standing rules on travel. Again, this is taxpayers' dollars we're talking about, he said. And so what this resolution is doing is just making it more transparent so that taxpayers can understand you went there, what you did, or what did you do. But Lee said again, the rules already require such transparency. Other senators, including herself, have been following them. We have to submit detailed travel reports that say where we're going, the purpose, where we are going, not where we've been, but where we're going. The purpose of the trip, meeting minutes, who we're meeting with, and after action items. Those are all things many senators have submitted. They're all available online on our website in our messages and communications. So I'm confused. Maybe Senator Moylan was unaware that's actually already her policy. But Moylan still questions the $67,000 in legislative travel and more than $100,000 in administration travel for this year alone. He also has a bill to require the same travel transparency for the entire government with a focus on cutting costs. Again, I'm not saying don't travel, he said, but also consider if there's other trips you're going to, could it have been done in a conference call? Could it have been done on the screen, which a lot of people do now as well? If not, and it's a must, then go. The two also took issue with each other. Moylan pointing out that Lee is the most traveled senator. No wonder. The most traveled senator. Which Lee said, I did take 4 trips last year. She said 2 of them were for APIL, which is, I'm going to rule right now, APIL is a waste of money. It's a lot of fun for the delegates. You stay in a nice hotel. You go to some interesting cocktail parties. You schmooze a lot. You can take it easy. And you don't accomplish anything. Now, I'm going to rely on my own experience here for a moment, and that is in my 2 terms in the legislature, after extensive study and research, thought, and reflection, I determined that most of our problems, if not all of our problems, are right here on Guam. And the best place to look for solutions is, guess where? Right here on Guam. It's not necessary to go to, high-powered conventions and fancy hotels to arrive at solutions to our problems. So 2 of her trips were APIL, and 1 of them was to the UN. Oh, that's a good use of our money. Yeah, go to the United Nations and bash the United States. If I could figure out a way to volunteer to pay more in income tax and know for sure that it was going to go to fund a trip for Raging Lee to go to the UN, by gosh, I'd do it. Because I can't think of a better way to spend our money than going to the UN. Okay, let's take a short break and I'll come back to Raging Lee versus Gentleman Jim Moylan.
At the mall, as you enjoy your shopping, dining, or entertainment, you could also win 3 great cars from Atkins Kroll and thousands of prizes in Micronesia Mall's Cars, Prizes, and Getaways game. Present your mall receipts and have a chance to win the renowned performance Chevrolet Camaro, the unapologetic rugged Toyota 4Runner, or the head-turning Lexus ES350 Luxury. Getaways to Manila, courtesy of Philippine Airlines, plus prizes from Foot Locker and Burger King. The more you shop, the more chance to win in Micronesia Mall's Cars, Prizes, and Getaways game.
Cocoa Coffee Company mugs are now here. Show pride for your island as you enjoy your delicious Circle K coffee. Each generously sized 16-ounce mug is etched with Guam-inspired images like Chief Gadao, Serena, two lovers, and many more. The Cocoa Coffee Company Mug Collection is available for a limited time only, so don't miss out. Get yours today and collect them all. Exclusively available at Circle K locations. A portion of the proceeds go toward the Cocoa Bird Recovery Program.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Yeah, I just took a peek at Facebook there during that short break. Ishmael Velez comes through. The guy's really got away with words. He says, it's not Festpack anymore, it's Pest Fact. Good call, Ishmael. And then Gus Chisanga says, Festpack should keep the government out of it. Michael is given free airfare. Let's see. And, well, everyone should get free airfare since they'd be performing. Yeah, that's something that article that I had, or that the column that Michael wrote, of course, let us know that he is one of the 100 people going to Festpack on our nickel. So I guess, I don't know, if I could dedicate some of my taxation, would I be more in favor of Raging Lee going to the UN or Michael Bavacqua going to Festpack? That's be a tough decision if I had to decide. And let's see, Jesse Lemtiaco says $8.1 million was spent on Festpack here in Guam in 2016. This can be an extension to that. Yeah, ha, it sure is. That's a real ha. I see there's another one that I was looking for here. James Howard says, I'm offended by that comment. I think it's time to write a stern letter to the Secretary General of the United Nations. You, meaning me, have crossed the line. Oh, my goodness. You mean I said something unkind about the United Nations? I hope I get a chance to do it again. Okay, I've got Dr. Vince Akimoto, a member of the Tall Tales think tank. Good afternoon, Vince.
Good day, Dr. Klitzkie. How are you?
Real good. Yourself?
Oh, I'm kind of grumpy. Stuck in traffic here, trying to get down to the legislature. Apparently, there's a lot of angry Aetna people going down to this legislative. I'm not sure what this is. I don't think it's an oversight hearing. It might be a public hearing, or it could be a town hall meeting.
Well,
I'm not sure what do you call it on a Friday night? Maybe it's a barn dance. I'm not sure.
Well, I noticed that it was going to be the opportunity for Aetna to come forward and kind of plead its case to the people. Now, I don't know if this is true, but I heard some rumors about tar and feathers.
Yeah, I'm thinking that the Aetna people are kind of dreading what's going to happen, because there's a long line of cars looking like they're ready to park out here and talk about the problems they're having with their Aetna insurance. But we'll see. I think it's going to be on the legislative YouTube channel, so everybody can sit around and participate if they don't get down there in person.
Well, I don't know. That'd be a tough call. You know, a person would have to miss Tall Tales in order to do that, Vince. Maybe.
No. I think the scheduling's just really perfect. As soon as you get off the air at 6 o'clock, it just ramps up, and I think it'll be full fireworks by 6:37.
Oh, everybody's cup runneth over then.
This is a great night. I mean, I think between the food trucks and this thing, it's going to be a hopping Friday night down there in the downtown Ganya.
Yes, sir.
But I'm calling actually about tourism, because I think we have a bit of a problem with our tourism industry, according to a bunch of really smart people who are suddenly medical experts at coronavirus, which is it's really exciting too. apparently all the people in the Guam Hotel Restaurant Association are worried about the welfare of their employees who are exposed to coronavirus when they change the beds for these tourists from China or Korea or Japan. And they're these employees who have to serve them lunch, breakfast, dinner, and stuff like that, getting into pretty close, intimate contact with these said tourist bodily fluids. So their chance of getting sick from tourists is not zero. We're hoping that the Guam Hotel Restaurant Association is sincere in their concern about their fellow tourism industry employees. So this would be a really great time, I think, for them as they are asking the governor to go back on her word and roll back the minimum wage, to maybe consider giving these people health insurance or at least some sort of coverage in case they get sick. Because I'm not sure if you know this, Dr. Klitzkie, but a lot of the people who work down in Hotel Row don't get health insurance from the hotels that don't pay taxes. They don't get any health insurance from these hotels that charge an 11% tax for, I guess, the room rates to the international as well as the local people who want to use those beds. And so that 11% tax goes to not the benefit of the employees, and very often, I think, for marketing purposes so that they can get more tourists to come from China and Hong Kong and Singapore.
You know, I heard that some hotels don't provide health insurance. I don't know. I wish someone would do a workup on that.
I think the health insurance industry has done that, and clearly they would be the beneficiaries. So I would imagine somebody smart like Mr. Jim Moylan, who worked for the insurance industry, would have that information. But I think it's because we take care of a lot of the employees at our American Medical Center. They're telling us to our face that they may have 2 or 3 jobs in the hotel industry, but none of them are given full-time status, and they don't get any of the health care benefits. So I don't think this is a myth, and you can call the HR people or just the GHRA, because they should have all that statistics, since tourism is supposed to be to the benefit of our people. Just how many of their hotel members are actually giving health insurance to all those housekeepers that work in the hotels day and night? And the answer is, sadly, probably only about 30 to 40%. So less than half of the employees in the hotels of Guam are considered full-time, and many of them have to have 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. And I think the hotels are getting away with murder if they're going to say that they're concerned about coronavirus, but they won't provide health insurance for these hard-working people. What say ye, Dr. Klitzkie?
Well, you can say almost anything. We know that. We see that demonstrated every election season. As far as health insurance is concerned, I don't know that I would be too crazy to see the government sticking its nose inside that tent either. I would hope that we are set up in such a manner that no one who really needs health care has to go without, with Medicaid and MIP, et cetera. But I'm going to have to say that I'd really like to have more information about the hotel industry and its employees. One thing I would mention is that 11% hotel occupancy tax.
Yep.
Yeah, that is theoretically to go to promoting the tourist industry to increase.
That's last year that was $65 million of marketing
to increase the revenue that comes to our tourist industry.
If we're going to get mad at Regine
Doc,
leave,
hey Doc, I've never been too crazy about that either. I think it tends to too much of it tends to go to the wrong hand. I see it as a form of economic rent that some rent seekers are very good at capturing. So I would like to see it. I always often wonder what would happen if we repealed it and let the hotel rates drop by 11%, if that might not be a better promotion than the so-called hotel occupancy tax.
Well, and let the hotels that don't pay any taxes, they don't pay any 5% GRT for the privilege of doing business on Guam, use that savings to market themselves. I mean, again, I think there's some justification for the government of Guam helping out with promoting tourism. Obviously, it's important. But $65 million in a good year, $40 million in a bad year, I bet Senator Bob Klitzkie in his day could have done a whole lot of good for the education of the children of Guam with the $40 million a year extra.
Well,
it always pained me that 11% tax was treated like a sacred cow that we could never touch to help the people of Guam. It was always for those rich hotel people that really don't care about their employees if they don't pay for their health insurance or don't take care of benefit packages, so that we can criticize them actually quite validly today, as we're now worried about the government of Guam's welfare, their employees. They pay $110 million a year for their health insurance for their employees. I mean, there's supposed to be there's somebody supposed to be watching out for the private sector.
Well, and that's the point I was making, that if we're going to ask for help, we should ask for the government to get out of the way. And one of the ways to get out of the way would be to do away with the hotel occupancy tax. I think the hotel industry is probably better at promoting themselves than any government agency is. Remember, I'm a conservative, and I don't want to see the government do anything except provide an effective, efficient government operating within the rule of law that provides basic services. And I don't see promoting the tourist industry as a basic government service.
So am I hearing you correctly, sir, live on the radio this afternoon, calling for the repeal of the 11% hotel occupancy tax and giving maybe that savings over to our local people who might be using those hotel rooms this weekend, since they're half full or half empty, depending on how optimistic you might be?
Well, let me make this really clear, okay?
Yes, sir.
Madam Speaker, repeal that tax.
You know, we're making a lot of progress here today on the radio.
I mean, that really would help, if we're concerned about. And I'm not one to say that hotels that are in business to make a profit are bad people, because they don't. They
don't need welfare. They don't need corporate welfare. We want the free market economy. Let's not be coddling all these hotel guys. They don't need it. They don't need training.
Well,
right?
And again, going back to how we started a hotel industry here, we had the qualifying certificate that goes all the way back to 1965. That was just a stroke of luck that we still have. You probably understand that. But if it weren't for that qualifying certificate angle, we probably wouldn't have to be worrying about a tourist industry, because I think it would have been very difficult to persuade anybody to come to what everybody thought was a small military island thousands of miles from anybody. Back when I first got here, Vince, when I was a teacher, I'd go into the teacher's lounge. You could be a stand-up comedian telling jokes about tourism on Guam.
Well,
I know how we can make a lot of money here on Guam. Start a tourist industry. Nobody's going to come to Guam. It's too far.
It's the power of dreams, right? If you can believe it, you can achieve it. Something like that. I mean, hardworking people like Berta and Pinko teaching us how to wave. But I think it's 2020 now. That was a little while. 1965 was a little while ago. And the folks that are running the hotels here have very short memories. So I'm not sure that they need training wheels anymore. And in point of fact, if they start laying off all these hardworking people, we can certainly see where their heart is, because they're threatening or cutting their hours and throwing them out in the streets. Where is the love?
Again, hotels, like all commercial businesses, are not eleemosynary institutions.
That's a good word. That's a great word.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
One thing that makes me kind of dangerous, Vince, I'm not as dumb as I look.
You've got a lot of degrees to prove it, too.
Pretty close, but yeah. So a hotel, a grocery store, a taxi driver, whatever, is in business to make more money, to bring in more revenue than he has costs. It's called a profit. They're not in business to be employment agencies. That's the government's job. The government doesn't have to worry.
bite your tongue. We're trying to train the government to be different now.
Yeah, well, they don't have to worry about silly things like cost of goods sold or revenue or profit or anything like that. If they have, if they have a bad year, they hire more people and raise taxes.
Right. So, yeah, I think the hotels are going to have to do without this corporate welfare then. So we'll just let them do their fair market stuff, and they might have to lay off a bunch of hardworking people. But that 11% tax might be able to stimulate, better tourist traffic during these very lean times.
Yeah, but now, of course, the real stumbling block here, what about the employees at GVB? You talk about sacred cows. There might be 25 or 30 people who would lose their jobs. We could save a whole industry. But oh no.
Yeah, they laid off 55 people over at the GRMC hospital last year, and nobody at GVB shed any tears for them. Nobody at the legislature or the governor's office acted like hell had frozen over. Those poor people had to go out into the market and try to find a job, and I think most of them did. But I'm not going to cry for 25 people at a government agency losing their job if they're not going to cry if 55 people at the GRMC private hospital got axed and no one cared. So it is tough times, and I think we want to care about everybody, but let's not use the government as a crutch or as training wheels for people's bad behaviors or just dumb luck. I mean, the thing is that this coronavirus thing is forcing everybody to be a little bit more, how shall we say, astute about how we manage our limited resources of $1 billion of general fund money as a result of an increase in taxes last year that was supposed to help the hospital. So we could go on, but I think there's a lynch mob for Aetna building outside the legislature, so we might not want to miss that fun tonight.
Well, I'm going to end the conversation here, Vince, by providing you a little bit of hope, okay?
Yes, sir.
If we can just hang on until June and FESPAC, if we can make it that far, we'll be okay.
I wonder how many senators are going to apply for travel funds so they can go to FESPAC in Hawaii.
Well, if they didn't come back, I'd say let's hope all of them go.
Have a great day, sir.
Thank you, Vince. Okay, let's take a short break here.
If you own a Toyota, please listen to this. It could help you avoid injury, maybe save your life. The Takata airbags installed in certain Toyotas can explode and shoot out sharp metal fragments at people inside the vehicle. You don't need to be in a collision. They could explode any time. In the U.S., these airbags have caused 26 deaths. There's been a worldwide recall of Takata airbags, and most have had the faulty parts replaced. But here in Guam, there are still over 3,000 Toyotas on the road with potentially lethal airbags, and yours could be one of them. So please, take your Toyota to Atkins Crow, even if you didn't buy it from us, and get the inflator replaced. It costs you nothing, it takes just about an hour, and it could save a life, yours or someone you love. The AK song says we're here for life. That's never been more true.
At Atkins Crow, we're here for life.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Well, I noticed that you opened up the Carl line while I was talking with Dr. Vince Akimoto, Real Joe Cruz.
I think he was compelled to call.
Compelled to call. Yeah. An overpowering, uncontrollable desire to call Tall Tales. It happens to you every day, doesn't it, our Carl?
Yeah, it's a regular occurrence. Yeah, as far as the minimum wage, I think it's a political solution to a how do you say, an economics problem.
How about an economic fact?
Yeah, an economic fact.
Economic reality that everybody can't make as much money as everybody else, right?
Well, they're punishing small business in general, but especially small businesses. Big businesses will, move people around, maybe lay off some people. How do you say? They'll, buy equipment to replace people. They'll figure it out. The ones that will really suffer are the small businesses.
Or executives might take, say, a 5 or 10% pay cut. But if you're a one-man shop, if you're a sole proprietor, and your profit margins aren't that large, you're not in that position to be able to do that.
Yeah, the legislators' main function should be to create policies and laws that create the environment to draw in job creators and create the maximum competition for labor. One of our mutual friends, Brad, living back in Texas, messaged me about a part of Texas which is booming because of the oil industry, and the average starting wage is $22 an hour. I mean, for McDonald's. Just if you can fog a mirror, they will hire you. They're so desperate. The legislators here have created policies that have been so business unfriendly that we have the situation we have, and we have a glut of labor. So this is a natural occurrence, is that with a glut of labor, the power is on the side of the employers. If employees aren't happy, well, I've got 500 applications in my file cabinet. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. In a booming economy, if they had, created the environment to draw in the maximum number of job creators to create maximum competition for labor, then the leverage switches over to the employees, because then you have a problem of turnover. Employees have 5 or 10 or 15 different job opportunities, and if they're not happy at your place of business, they're gone. You just wasted all this time training them, and turnover just will bleed them dry. Every year, with Fortune and Forbes runs something like the 100 best places to work in America. Fantastic wages, fantastic training, fantastic benefits. Those companies aren't doing that because the government waved a magic wand and forced them to do it. They're doing it because they are in a competition to get the best labor, best quality labor, and to keep them.
Can I interject something here?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. One thing that does not enter into this calculus at all is heart. Businesses that pay good wages don't do it because they, quote, have a heart. That is not what makes the system work. Whether you have really kind, big-hearted people, or really mean, skinflint type people in business. Businessmen do what they have to do in order to be profitable. And as you say, if a business needs labor and there's competition, there's competition in the market, then they're going to have to pay more money to get the labor they need to run their businesses. They don't pay higher wages because, well, they're really nice people. They go to church every Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. So we find ourselves in this situation precisely because of the policies that have been put in place. One of the huge tasks at hand, which legislature after legislature and whoever would be involved in it has ignored over the years and decades, is delinking from our present tax code and creating a more competitive tax code. One small place that has created the conditions to draw in the job creators and create maximum competition for labor is Hong Kong. Very tiny place, but they've created the conditions for maximum competition. And just read a quick description here. It has an uncomplicated tax system with low rates on both individual and business, and an overall tax burden that's a mere 14% of GDP, or half the U.S. rate. No taxes on capital gains or interest income, or even earnings from outside of Hong Kong. No sales tax or VAT tax. A very light regulatory touch. no government budget deficit, and almost non-existent public debt. And it says here, no, don't forget, it's an average tariff rate of near zero. So, there was a movie many years ago that came out called Field of Dreams, and the tagline on the poster was, if you build it, they will come. If we build the right tax environment, the right business environment, they will come. Because we're already in a worldwide competition for capital, whether we want to be or not. We're either going to do it badly or we're going to do it well. And right now we're not doing it very well. We're doing okay, fair, but we just need to change it to make it much more competitive.
True enough. Hong Kong is a classic example. I first time I went to Hong Kong was 1964. It was a sleepy tropical backwater in those days, doing all right. But you go to Hong Kong now, and it's right up there with, like New York and the major cities of the world. And the secret has been that they stay out of the way of business. One of the interesting things about Hong Kong is that there's no tax on money repatriated to Hong Kong by Hong Kong corporations. They can bring as much of their worldwide income into Hong Kong as possible without paying any tax on it. So guess what happens? Capital accumulates in Hong Kong, and it's available for investment.
Exactly. There were 4 major tax increases in the 20th century. One in the 20s, and there was Kennedy and Reagan and Bush. After all 4 of those tax cuts, I meant to say, government revenues increased. They didn't go down. And some people respond, well, the deficit went up, and so the debt increased, which is true. But the problem was not that revenues didn't increase. It's that government spending swallowed up all the increased revenues. That was the problem. Anyway, Bob, you're almost at the top of the hour. Thank you for allowing me to weigh in. I appreciate it. Very interesting show as usual.
Thank you very much, Carl. So always a pleasure to talk to our Carl, right, Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. Oh, good timing, our Carl. He hung up just at exactly the right time. Well, let's take a break for that big halftime show that you all enjoy so much. The marching bands, the cheerleaders, the drill team, the sword swallowers, the fire eaters, the synchronized card section, and the grandstand, and that barrage of cannon fire at the end of the show. So I'll be back in about 7 minutes.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Moscow meddling again. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. That's what the House Intelligence Committee has been warned.
The New York Times says lawmakers were told Russia intends to interfere with the 2020 Democratic primaries as well as the general election. But Devin Nunes, the top Republican on the House Intelligence Committee, is downplaying the report, telling Fox's Laura Ingraham,
"Why did they let the Republicans lose the House of Representatives and Nancy Pelosi won last time?"
Meanwhile, the committee's chairman, Democrat Adam Schiff, tweets, if reports are true and the president is interfering with congressional briefings, he is, quote, again jeopardizing our efforts to stop foreign meddling.
That's Fox's Sean Lanchel in Washington. Political consultant Roger Stone sentenced Thursday for lying to Congress and witness tampering. After all the controversy about the Justice Department interference, even the judge agreed the initial sentence recommendation of 7 to 9 years was way too high. She gave Stone 3 years, 4 months. The president could pardon Stone, but he told a group in Las Vegas,
I want the process to play out. I think that's the best thing to do, because I'd love to see Roger exonerated.
Another night, another rally for the president Thursday in Colorado Springs.
Democrats think that Colorado should be a haven for murderers, predators, kidnappers, and felons in our country, and that come in illegally Republicans believe that Colorado should be a sanctuary for law-abiding Americans, not criminal aliens.
The president also taking some jabs at the Democrats for Thursday night's debate, especially Mike Bloomberg's showing. Politico is reporting that Bloomberg is trying to convince Democrat Party officials currently aligned with Joe Biden and the other moderates to back him instead, apparently believing that if there is a brokered convention, party insiders would give him the nomination over Senator Sanders. America is listening to Fox News.
Yikes, are those Christmas bills coming in? Wait, hold on, that was last month. Now it's this month. But by popular demand, we're extending our New Year's solution 4.65% personal loan through February. Money for whatever you want at 4.65% APR from Bank Pacific. We're still celebrating.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal credit opportunity lender as low as 4.65%. Conditions apply.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon is stirring up some of your favorite drinks all night long. Come down on Wednesday and Friday nights from 5:30 to 10 p.m. Indulge in some of your favorite local cuisine and pair it with your favorite drink. From our ice-cold beers, our finest selection of wines and liquors, to our top-notch cocktail specials, your friends at Mezcla Bistro Tumon are ready to serve you. Why limit happy to only an hour? The Mezcla family reminds everyone to drink responsibly. See you on Wednesday and Friday night.
The Trump administration reporting better than expected economic growth.
In an annual report, the White House says the economy is outperforming pre-2016 election expectations, citing job gains and lower unemployment. The labor market added more than 2 million new jobs, bringing the civilian unemployment rate down to 3.5%, its lowest level since 1969. The report comes on the heels of a Twitter spat between President Trump and former President Obama, who highlighted the anniversary of the $800 billion stimulus package he signed during the Great Recession. The president fired back, accusing Obama of trying to take credit for economic growth under his administration. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
South Korea now battling an increase in coronavirus infections, declaring a special management zone around the southern city of Daegu. There are 156 reported cases of the virus in South Korea. China says the rate of new infections there continues to slow, but another 118 people have died from the virus. 11 more Americans have tested positive. All of them had been evacuated to Nebraska from that cruise ship in Japan on which several hundred people became infected. Washington and London accusing Russia of a cyber attack.
The US and the UK joining the country of Georgia in blaming Russia for a cyber attack on the former Soviet Republic last fall. The strike knocked thousands of websites offline and interrupted TV broadcasts. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo accusing Russia's military intelligence agency known as the GRU. It's been accused by Western governments of orchestrating a series of cyber attacks in recent years. Russia rejecting the allegations. In London, Simon Owen, Fox News.
The salvage firm that plucked treasures from the wreckage of the Titanic now wants to recover the ship's Marconi wireless telegraph machine that transmitted the doomed ship's distress calls, asking a federal judge for permission to cut into the hull. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
February 27th, it's the last call for leadership.
How do you grow a company? You grow a company by growing people. And when you grow them, they increase their capacity. When they increase their capacity, they begin to increase the capacity of what you can accomplish.
The voice of John C. Maxwell on the last chance to see the Live to Lead conference in November. Over 300 leaders and future leaders experienced a day full of big ideas, fun, and high-level motivation. For those who couldn't make it, we're doing it again. Registration closes soon. Get the details at guamtraining.com. Live to Lead is brought to you by Atkins Kroll, Guam's #1 car dealership. Also by Hawaiian Rock Products, the Guam Contractors Association, the Guam Daily Post, at 93.3 The Point. Energize your team. Join the Guam Live to Lead conference today.
Hafaday, this is Congressman Michael Nicholas. Our veterans deserve the best, and I'm working hard to make sure they receive what they earned defending our freedom. If you need help receiving the benefits you earned from the VA or the Defense Department, please call my office at 475-6453 or go online at stnicholas.house.gov. On behalf of a grateful community, thank you for your service.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael Nicholas.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So great. Such a great show. Every day here at Tall Tales at 1700, the big halftime show. Okay, that means we're beginning the second half of Tall Tales. I'm going to take a peek at Facebook here and see what you guys out there in the international radio listening audience have to say. I read James Howard just before the break where James, I think, put me on report with the UN when I said not some unkind things about the United Nations. James says, I'm offended by that comment. I think it's time to write a stern letter to the Secretary of the United Nations, General of the United Nations. You, meaning me, have crossed the line. Well, I hope so, James. And then we've got Jesse Limtiaco, who says, Gus, $8.1 million was spent for FESPAC in 2016. Yeah, I already talked about that. I guess if we could waste $8 million in 2016, we could waste $350,000 in 2020, right? Makes sense. Certain symmetry there. And then Pierre says, Biscuit Lee will soon be toast. I think, I don't, je ne parle français, but I think that one has to understand the word biscuit or biscotti and compare that with toast to fully understand Pierre's bilingual dig on Senator Raging Lee. And then we've got Jesse Limtiaco. What about the self-pay people that owe $26 million to GMH? Why don't we bash on them as much as those selected to go to FESPAC Hawaii? Well, okay, you know, those $26 million, those people that owe that $26 million at GMH. Wow, what are we getting out of that? I wish they'd publish their names somewhere so we could say bad things about them. Okay, Jesse? Is that what you were looking for? I would start out with the proposition, Jesse, kind of half seriously, that people should pay their debts. That's part of living in a civilized society. And if people owe debts to the hospital, they should pay those debts. I suspect that for some of those people, it's not a matter of lack of desire, it's a matter of lack of money. But on the other hand, I don't see any aggressive efforts on the part of the hospital to collect money from anybody. I've never seen a notice of foreclosure in the hospital where the hospital sues somebody or a notice of an execution sale. I don't know that the hospital does anything to collect that money. And my suspicion is that an awful lot of people go to the hospital saying, well, you know, you really don't have to pay it. If you don't pay it, they'll send you a couple letters and then they'll forget about it. So you don't have to pay it if you don't want to. So I guess I'd probably bash on the hospital as much as I'd bash on the non-payers, Jesse. But if you want to, you can feel free to bash on the people that owe the money. Let's see. Then Pierre comes back and tells us that Che Bavakwa was on the trip to the United Nations, the one that Raging Lee went on. Che Bavakwa was there too. I can't tell you how happy I am to know that Che Bavakwa got to go to the United Nations. Let's see. James Howard comes along. Pierre poses the rhetorical question, guess who paid for all these trips? And, of course, we know who paid. Pierre comes back. If they are working less than 30 hours a week, they would not qualify for health care. I think he's probably talking about some, if not all, of the hospitals. Yeah, I know from my own experience, if you're not a full-time employee, no hospital insurance. Being a part-time employee myself. A part-time employee with full-time work, Real Joe Cruz.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. It's not easy being the host of Tall Tales.
It's not.
No. James Howard comes back. Akimoto for president. Gus Chisangas says that's exactly what's happened in Vegas. No one is full-time in Las Vegas. He's talking about, I guess, the hotels and all of the large hotels in Vegas not hiring full-time employees. If I'm wrong on that, Gus, please correct me. James Howard, repeal the tax. Give the 11%, 11%, give it to the union. Well, you know, if what I'm hearing here about hospital insurance and some of the other things, like the other governor, Leon Guerrero, keeps talking about the labor force in the hotels, that may be the next thing that our tourist industry may have to deal with, labor unions. And then Gus says, yes, repeal the hotel tax. Pierre says the 11% tax is quite high compared to other markets. It's up there with the most expensive cities around the world. James Howard, once all these service and hospitality folks get organized, oh, man. Pierre, Gus Chisangas, all the large companies do that, unfortunately. I don't know what he means by do that. I suspect. I don't know. I can't tell. Jesse Limtiaco, there wasn't any taxes until Americans came to Guam. Spanish didn't have any taxes. Is that right, Jesse? You remember that?
Colonizers.
Yeah, the colonizers brought their tax. There was no taxes before the Spanish and the Americans and the Japanese came to Guam, right? Now, of course, Jesse, back before 1950, before the Organic Act, there were no medical bills either. As medical and dental were free to all of the residents of Guam. Gus comes back and says, times have changed. Tourism marketing no longer requires printing in magazines. Social platforms have proven more effective than travel magazines. Well, when it comes to marketing, I'm just going to tell a story that I heard from Al Israel, who was a real pioneer in tourism here. And he actually kind of started the first hotel. There was a hotel, as it were, an apartment building that Al converted into a hotel. Of course, I can't remember the name of the hotel. I think it's still in business. So he took a standard apartment building, converted it into a hotel, went through the process, and then he went to Tokyo and got signs made to be mounted on the rear of taxi cabs. And I don't see these on taxi cabs anymore like it used to be. It used to be you go to any American city and there would be about a 2 by 3 inch sign posted on the back of all the taxis. So Al said he did that and had some nice pictures of sun and sand in Guam and come to Guam and a phone number. That was his marketing. It was fantastically successful. He was able to do very well with that hotel that he started. It was only after that, with the qualifying certificates, and we finally got the Hilton, but there were 3 false starts and finally getting the Hilton going. So Gus has got a good point here. You know, the old way of marketing resorts, not the same anymore. And do we really need to have an 11% tax on every one of the hotel rooms to promote the industry? Or my proposition, if we did away with a tax and hotels were able to cut their rates, would that be a more effective promotion? I'd like to find out, and there wouldn't be a better time to do it than right now. Jesse comes back and says, Pierre, laughing out loud, how about the French? When did they start taxing its citizens? That's really funny. Boy, I'll tell you what, Jesse Limtiaco, you know, there are about 3,000 stand-up comedians out of work in the United States, and you're telling jokes. Going on down here a little bit. Jesse Luntiaco, it came before the Franks. It was introduced by the Greeks about 250 BC in what was then Gaul. Gaul. Yeah. Pierre's a pretty smart guy, you know, Jesse. You can't just be slinging remarks at him and expect that you got him, no matter how many times you use the word colonizer in a sentence. Okay, then we've got Richard Leone, sin actor Tina Munga Barnes. I don't know, I don't know the rest of that, but that's a new name for Senator Tina Rose Munga Barnes. And Pierre, even then, people were not citizens but subject, going back to France. The term citizen became in vogue with the French Revolution. Like most things brought in by the French Revolution, it was not a positive thing. If you know anything about the French Revolution, the rule of terror, on and on and on. And Jesse, Pierre, your countryman, or former countryman, French explorer Louis Claude de Freycinet came to Guam in 1819. Chamorro society had changed by that time. I don't know if he noted or observed slavery. Mark Cruz is listening on 93.3 FM. I wonder if that's the guy that calls and makes his mark. Probably, huh? James Howard, come on, Carl. You know how much underground untaxed commerce happens in Hong Kong. Not a good example. Well, I think it is a good example because it kind of proves Carl's point. You know, the lower the taxes, the greater the more it facilitates commerce. Let's see here. Joey Tovis, Guam's new motto: if you tax them, they will leave. Ishmael Velez, completed my Bachelor's of Science in Leadership using my GI Bill. God bless the USA. Carl Bora Nelson, that's going to happen anywhere. Hong Kong was a very small area and no natural resources to sell. Their asset is their business environment. We refuse to learn, so we suffer the consequences. Legislators think that taxes and business are captive. They're not. Our present policies and laws are a formula for shrinking the tax base. James Howard, Carl Borja Nelson, I would have used Singapore. It's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Biggest difference between Singapore and three big differences. Singapore got kicked out of the Federation of Malaysia because there were too many Chinese.
Better Hong Kong believe it.
Yes, sir. and Hong Kong, of course, is and has always been a Chinese city, and it didn't seem to make any difference to anybody. Singapore is just across the Straits of Johor from Malaya, a very resource-rich place. Singapore had Lee Kuan Yew, perhaps the greatest nation builder of the 20th century. Hong Kong had a group of British civil servants up until 1997. Similar principles, though, except that Singapore gets really into the whole managed economy thing, public housing, and a lot of things that would probably be hard for Americans to put up with. Gus Jasangas, I went to UN to meet Chinese officials for an endeavor that will benefit Guam in 2021, but I paid my own way. Wow. Richard Lee Leone, and what about the old and new accounts program and no support to maintenance was considered? Who was responsible? I don't know about that. Gus Jasangas, tourism employees work 32 hours. No one is full-time, but salary employees. And let's see, I got Jay Merrill on the line. Wow. Good afternoon, Jay.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Doing fine.
I was listening to the discussion that the doctor had about the 11% occupancy tax, and I wanted just to clarify some things about that and what it does and how people feel about it, because we've been measuring public opinion with regard to the hotel occupancy tax for some time. The hotel occupancy tax funds GVB. So it almost acts like a private organization in the sense that these businesses contribute together to create a fund that's going to be used to promote the industry. And I think, Bob, you're familiar with the term that they call the free rider. And one of the big problems in promoting a group industry is, of course, that one business won't feel compelled to contribute to a group effort because they feel that others should do it, or if others do it, then they feel they don't have to. So consequently, it becomes important sometimes to create mechanisms by which there's a compelling interest for all of those that would benefit would participate. In this instance, the hotel industry has stepped up, and they have borne the market effect of an increase in their rates by 11%, so that there can be expenditures designed, yes, to promote the industry as a whole, but over time, GVB's mission has grown to include not just promotional activities, but also development of Guam as a tourism destination. So that money now is underwriting bonds that are funding infrastructure improvement in Tumon necessary to make sure that, that when it rains, that the water doesn't drown someone along our strip. It also has gone into funding a large portion of parks and recreation so that the parks in Tumon are maintained, and now that's been expanded across the island. And in fact, when you ask Guamanians whether or not they think that those investments are a good idea, 90% of them say that it is. And in fact, they should continue. And in fact, GVB as an organization is viewed as far more effective in providing services that would be necessary to help enhance the destination over what they perceive that the government of Guam would provide. So at the end of the day, we've got ourselves into this kind of a pickle where this hotel occupancy tax now is integrally tied to not only the development of our image and our market position, but it's tied to maintaining the customer experience that is here, and the government has pretty much divorced its responsibility and provided that to GVB, which is a shame.
Was that a case of mission creep? Was that something that the GVB chased after? Or?
They didn't chase after. It was the fact that if they did not do it, then, of course, there would not be the necessary improvement. They don't have time to wait for GVB or the government of Guam to decide that that's going to be a priority. Instead, the government took the tack that, well, this is a large piggy bank, and so they've gone to start raiding the hotel occupancy tax revenues for other issues, and one of them being the promotion of culture, other things which I think could probably be justified in terms of promoting Guam, but not necessarily central to the overall mission of what the hotels believe are important. Now, obviously, the culture of Guam is a huge attraction, and that's important, but they also are probably more concerned with making sure the roads are safe, that the lights stay on, that the medians are trimmed, that the parks have clean restrooms, that the parks are well maintained. So now it's gotten to the point where GVB, and they're involved right now in a strategic planning initiative to try and sort out what their role really should be. If they become, in essence, a quasi-governmental entity responsible for this portion of the infrastructure, then there needs to be discussion in the community, I think, about whether or not that's a good idea. And what my position is at the moment is not necessarily advocating one or the other, but to say that most people on Guam think that's a good idea, that GVB should be involved in providing those services. So the doctor has missed the boat in terms of understanding the importance and integral nature that the hotel occupancy tax plays. And it's also now, because we have so many bonds that are funded by it, that the actual credit worthiness of Guam overall would be impacted if there was a major change. So I just wanted to interject that so that the discussion going forward might be pointed towards a direction that would be more productive.
So what you're telling us, Jay, is that the GVB has kind of become the city council for the San Vitoris area.
Well, in many ways that is true. I mean, at the moment, I finished another study for the Bureau of Statistics and Plans, and GVB, for example, was looked to as the key component in determining and maintaining public access, which is a land use issue. And they're viewed as being essential to that process. So, yes, I mean, as this thing slips on, and without a firm determination of what their role is going to be, they're going to become more and more involved. And maybe at the end, that's what we need. Some sort of economic entity, some sort of economic zone in Tumon where a GVB could be allowed to provide that kind of oversight. At the moment, if that were to be proposed, most people would approve it.
But it kind of sounds like de facto that's where we are.
Well, we are to an extent that GVB is now responsible for these items, and the government has determined that that's where they want to be, but there's not necessarily any sort of long-term plan or any sort of understanding strategically of what role that's going to be in the future. How large does it go? What responsibilities will it be down the road?
As far as the hotel occupancy tax with outstanding bonds, that's locked. There isn't much sense in talking about that. But the point that I made when we started talking about this was, I wonder if hotel rates drop by 11%, if that wouldn't be a more effective way to promote the industry than whatever it is that GVB does, which I don't know what it does.
Well, what GVB has done is tried to establish a brand image. And in fact, what Guam is attempting to do is identify itself as a place where we want to increase the spend associated with visitors coming. We are trying to get away from being simply a discount destination and try and improve the quality, and that's viewed by the amount of spend the visitors make. So the objective then might shift slightly from simply reducing the hotel tax to improving the overall quality of the experience they obtain. And that's sort of the direction that up until this new strategic plan that is under development has taken, that it wants to make Guam a higher class, a better, a more impactful and immersive destination. And so that's the road they've been on for the last 4 or 5 years. And it's unknown where this new strategic plan will end. But in essence, the objective for all of the businesses that associate with GVB is to try increased visitor spend. They want Guam to be identified as a location where you don't come and necessarily do all of your food shopping at ABC, that you are out experiencing great restaurants, you're experiencing all of the attractions that are available, and that it looks to be a place where you would spend as much as other competing destinations in the region. And right now, we still have a ways to go.
Well, at one point in the program here, I called on the speaker to repeal the hotel occupancy tax. My call to action remains in place, notwithstanding the fact that you've brought some interesting facts into the discussion, Jay. I still wonder, though, I'm still wondering if a lower price or a lower tax on hotels might spur the hotels themselves into doing more promotion. I understand what you're saying about the free rider, but being a conservative, I don't like the government getting involved to force people to do that which they wouldn't do on their own. But I really appreciate your insights, Jay. Thank you for calling.
Thank you, Bob.
at the mall as you enjoy your shopping, dining, or entertainment. You could also win 3 great cars from Atkins Kroll and thousands of prizes in Micronesia Mall's Cars, Prizes, and Getaways game. Present your mall receipts and have a chance to win the renowned performance Chevrolet Camaro, the unapologetic rugged Toyota 4Runner, or the head-turning Lexus ES350 Luxury. Getaways to Manila, courtesy of Philippine Airlines, plus prizes from Foot Locker and Burger King. The more you shop, the more chance to win in Micronesia Mall's Cars, Prizes, and Getaways game.
GRMC's cardiology department treats most complex heart problems. In our catheterization lab, cardiologists use imaging equipment to treat clogged arteries that can cause heart attacks or heart failure. We perform balloon angioplasty, stenting, and other life-saving cardiac procedures. If you suffer from a heart condition, have your provider refer you to GRMC's cardiology clinic at 645-5500. GRMC, where patients are partners.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mescla. Try their featured special for February. Southern Spice Crispy Fried Chicken. Louisiana-inspired fried half chicken served with red beans and rice. Available in Hagåtña and in Tumon at the Grand Plaza Hotel. For reservations, please call 969-2652.
So, 7th inning stretch. Here we are, Wrigley Field, center field bleachers, Chicago. And we just spent some time down on San Vitores Boulevard looking at the hotels, the sun and sand. We had a caller, Jay Merrill, who was quite knowledgeable about the uses of the hotel occupancy tax. I gave him a darn good listening to, but informed him that my call to action to the speaker is still in place, although I'd have to modify it so that we didn't run afoul of any bond obligations that are funded by the hotel occupancy tax. And once again, if there were an effort to help the hotel industry, then at least a moratorium on collecting the hotel occupancy tax might be the way to go. It might not, but it bears more discussion than I want to give it this afternoon on Tall Tales. Having once planted the seed, I feel that others can bring the tree to fruition. Okay, let's go back to Gentleman Jim Raging Lee versus Gentleman Jim Moylan. And Jim Moylan introduced a resolution at the legislature requiring certain things when a senator travels, a report that, among other things, explains why the trip was necessary if it couldn't have been accomplished by some other means. The senator that had been doing the most traveling, a certain Senator Raging Lee, took issue with what Jim Moylan said. Now, the fact that she's done the most traveling, I think, is just an interesting but irrelevant circumstance here. I don't think that's what was the motivator for her to come back firing at Jim Moylan. And she took some really worthwhile trips. She went to APIL, and she went to the United Nations. And this is what she said. 2 of them were for APL. One of them was to the UN because the governor was unable to attend. So as the vice chair kind of stepped in, so I, as the vice chair, kind of stepped in and provided representation there. But I mean, it's part of my job. Vice chair of what? I thought she was a senator and the chairman of the Rules Committee in the legislature. So, you know, I thought Moylan made a pretty good case here for his resolution, but now when Senator Raging Lee has come back and criticize the attempt of Moylan, I'm all the more convinced that Moylan's really got something going for him there. And then, I'll tell you what, Raging Lee delivered the knockout punch. Jim Moylan is talking about travel, saying, you know, I can see it's necessary, but I think the people have a right to know what it was for, was it really necessary, et cetera, et cetera. And then Raging Lee really dropped the dime on Jim Moylan by saying, Lee also noting that Moylan missed important votes during a legislative session that just happened to coincide with Super Bowl Monday. Ah.
How dare he?
Yeah, how dare he? He was playing hooky. Now, according to Moylan, there were no votes on that day. He was on a trip that he'd planned before the session had been scheduled. But looking at it in a light most unfavorable to Jim Moylan, Moylan proposes a resolution dealing with reporting official travel. And Raging Lee's counter to that is, yeah, but you missed a session. Would that be quid pro? No, that wouldn't be quid pro. That would be tit for tat, I think, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Tit for tat.
Tit for tat. Okay. So let's see. You opened up the Joe line, right? Real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I've got another Joe on the line. Good afternoon, another Joe.
Uncle Bob, I think the chair position he's referencing is the chair of the Democrat Party, or the vice chair, or whatever her title is of the Democrat Party. She's quite a what's the word? She's in the pipeline, the fast track, so to speak, for positions of importance, so to speak. She's been the chair of the party. She's got the committee on rules, so she's definitely someone important, someone smart for the party, for the Democrat Party. That is.
Would it be fair to say that she's been a raging success?
There you go, Uncle Bob. So,
but why would the chair of the Democrat Party be going to the United Nations?
I'm not. I don't know. Unfortunately, Uncle Bob, I don't have all the answers like you at times. I'm just guessing it's in the possibly tradition of former Robert Underwood.
Uh-huh.
he seemed to find some attention at the United Nations, and perhaps it makes the Democrats feel better to mingle in those circles, so to speak.
Well, okay, but let's agree on this, Real Joe Cruz. I don't want to pay for any more of her trips. I don't want to pay for any more trips to APIL or to the United Nations. I want senators to stay here and do their jobs. How about you?
All right, Uncle Bob. Thanks for your time, and I'll keep listening.
Thanks a lot. Okay, so now we're going to jack up the conversation just a little bit, right, Jack?
How you doing today, Bob?
I'm doing pretty good, Jack.
Yeah, I was listening to you about doing away with the hotel occupancy tax. Here's another thing that we should do away with. That surcharge, that 10% surcharge they have down there in Lower Tumon. We should do away with that, too. I use Uber and I use Lyft when I go and I have to do business in the States or anything personal. I never tip. I get a perfect 5-star rating. Do you know why?
Why?
I don't tip using the app. If they do service me, I give them cash. It's gratuitous. And all the time, I get a perfect 5 rating without tipping through the app or anything like that. The problem we have here in Tumon is that every restaurant that I go to that has this surcharge, they also have a tip jar. And every time I pay by my credit card, there's still a gratuitous section there on my credit card bill. So if you really want to look at things, not only we should look at if we're not going to do away with the hotel occupancy tax, we should just put it back in the general fund. That we should do it. Go to the proper channels if you need funding, or you need, if you need money or whatever. Like I said, nothing here is funded by the government. Everything is funded by taxpayers, and that includes the hotels. So get rid of this extra pocket that this money is going to, and just put it back in the general fund where it's supposed to be.
Are you talking about the hotel occupancy tax now, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and just do away with the surcharge, that 10% surcharge.
Well,
let the GHR pay their employees the way they think they should be paid.
Well, the surcharge is just a matter of the way a company wants to bill its customers. I don't quite understand the logic behind the 10% surcharge, but if the bill is $1 and a 10% surcharge, it's no different than charging somebody $1.10. Except I think that, there's some confusion. I think some customers might think, well, that surcharge goes to the employees. Therefore, I can count that as part of my tip. It's kind of unfair to the employees.
Well, that's not how I understood it, but
how do you understand? How do you understand it?
That surcharge was part because Japanese tourists weren't tipping.
Well,
and so
do you think that the
surcharge that's only applied down to lower Tumon doesn't apply anywhere else in Guam?
Yeah, Jack. Do you think that the 10% surcharge goes to the employees?
That's the way I understood it.
I don't think so, Jack. I think you'd be wrong about that. I think it just goes straight to management's pocket.
Okay. Now we have some clarity on this issue with us because that's what I thought it did, and I never understood why it only applied in Lower Tumon, not the rest of the island.
Oh, there are a few other places around the island that added on. It kind of gets mixed up into something that's a little bit complicated, dealing with the Fair Labor Standards Act called tip credit. And the way the FLSA works every place else, the minimum wage for waiters, waitresses, et cetera, is like $2.75. The thinking being that the rest of the minimum wage will be recovered in employee tips. But we don't have tip credit here, much to the chagrin of restaurant owners. And the whole 10% surcharge thing came about in the process of dealing with the lack of tip credit.
No. Okay.
Okay.
So it did involve tips.
It involved the tip credit, a little bit different, but it is a private matter.
All right, Bob. So let's say you just have a great weekend then, huh? And well, what can I say?
Hey, Jack, I didn't even tell a joke, and you're cracking up. That's not fair.
Well, the whole surcharge is a joke. It's a big joke. Big joke on customers. Big joke on employees. So, yeah, it's kind of a sad day to learn this.
Okay, Jack, thanks for calling. Jesse Limpiaco, going back to something you said here about, let me see here. Probably can't find it.
That's one of my favorite callers.
Jack.
Yeah. Every time he calls, it's like we're beginning a duel with swords. He's like, ha ha!
Yeah, anyhow, I'm going to read this statement again, Jesse. You said that the reason that Lee went was to act as the substitute for the governor, and that's exactly what she said. Let me read it again. Lee, as you were, I did take 4 trips last year. 2 of them were for APIL. One of them was to UN because the governor was unable to attend. So I, as the vice chair, kind of stepped in and provided representation there. But, I mean, it's part of my job. So you didn't understand that, Jesse. I don't understand why it was part of her job, and I don't know what she's the vice chair of, except taking trips. Okay. We got, we're going to break for the Kentucky Derby, Churchill Downs, for a few minutes here.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in the Grand Plaza Hotel Tumon is now serving your favorite daily specials. Come one, come all. Enjoy your Monday with that savory cut and pica. Your Tuesday with your one and only candied salmon. Stroll by on Wednesday to try that local style oxtail kadu. Or Thursday if you're feeling that pan crisp pork belly served over roasted sweet potato mash. And don't forget that miso yaki black cod with garlic mashed potatoes on Friday. Busy at work and still want your fix? Call 969-2652 for your takeout order.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Okay, so home stretch. And we got Jay Merrill back on the line. The second time, he has never called before. And now he wants to ride the Ferris wheel twice in the same program. It must have been a good ride, Jay.
Yeah, well, sorry, Bob. I have called before, but it was a long time ago.
Oh, okay.
But nonetheless, I heard something that you said that isn't quite accurate. You're absolutely true.
Hard to believe, Jay.
Yeah, well, I understand, but it is absolutely true that the service charge is a private matter that employers are left to decide, but most employers now provide, if not all, at least some of that service charge directly to employees. I know that because I'm a part owner in a restaurant, and I know that employees have come to expect that the service charge is passed on. It's usually passed on as part of their check every, biweekly or semi-monthly, depending on how they pay. And that is adhered to and has now become a matter of perhaps not de jure, but de rigueur, because that is what's required in order to maintain competent and effective workforce. So it is now baked in to the overall wage bill.
Where did I go wrong, Jay?
You indicated that employers pocket it all, that employers take all that money, and they don't share it with employees, and that was the impression that was provided.
Well, one of the things that I point out frequently is that money is fungible. So if the surcharge goes into the employer's pocket and he chooses to make it part of the wage package, fine. That's a matter of the employer's discretion.
Yeah, well, that's important because I don't want the public to get the impression that service charge is not getting to employees, and it is. And if not all, or a substantial portion of it is. And so customers need to understand that when they pay that service charge, it is helping employees directly.
Well, that's a pretty well-kept secret, Jay. I do remember when it got mixed up into the whole tip credit controversy. This was 20 years or so ago. But it would seem that employers, operators might want to inform their customers what happens to that service charge if it is all of it goes to the wage package of the employees.
Well, we do at our restaurant. We let them know that it does go to the employees. And if we don't do that, many of them refuse to pay it. So we think that that's important. So it's not a law. It's not something that's mandated by the government, but it's something that employers are trying to do in order to encourage more benefits and higher wages for folks that are working in the service business.
What would be the problem with just having a single price without a 10% add-on?
Well, the 10% add-on is not a requirement for the customer to pay, and so it would be up to the customer whether they want to pay it or not.
Really?
We get that question constantly. Yes.
Oh no, I learned something there. Okay. Well,
It's on the check and it's expected to be paid, but if they object to it, they don't have to pay it.
okay. Well, our international radio listening audience learned a valuable lesson today, Jay. Thank you very much for clarifying that.
My pleasure, Bob.
Okay. Well, good talking to you again, Jay.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Wow, that's interesting. When I get a check and it shows a service charge on it, I would reduce perhaps my tip. Probably not. I probably just figure, well, that's the way they want to calculate their prices. I'll pay it. So we got another call coming in here, just right on the home stretch. Tall tales. And it's Jesse. Good afternoon, Jesse.
Good afternoon, Bob. I just wanted to ask, if I was, if I walked into Regine Lee's office or scheduled a meeting with her, would I be able to ask to see their office budget or any senator for that matter, and basically get a summary of how they spent their money and stuff? Is that something that we as citizens of Guam or the U.S. can do?
You could do a Freedom of Information Act request, and they would have to show you what you asked for.
Okay.
And the law would allow you to just walk in and say, this is what I want to see. And they're supposed to provide it for you. I suspect it wouldn't work very well for you. But let me tell you about the good old days, Jesse. If you go to a website called bobsoffice.org.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. I've seen it before.
Well, you could see there that for 4 years I accounted for every single penny of government money that I spent, exactly where it went, et cetera. There's no reason why all the rest of them can't be doing that.
But they're not Bob Klitzkie, though, eh?
No, that's for sure.
Okay, so but they can do it, right?
For sure, they can do it. Yeah, it's already been done.
So you know how you like to say sometimes that people make these resolutions or these laws to just that something's already existing. Isn't Moylan just doing the same thing, like just putting something on top of what's already there? I mean, if we can, I would think I could go into her office and be like, hey, how did your trip in DC go, or how did your recent trip to DC go? And she can just lay it out on the line, or maybe put it on Facebook if she wanted to. And I think she said it's also available online. So I just wanted to know how hard it was to get in there and ask that type of information, like, what did you spend your money on? How did the trip go? And all that kind of stuff,
Well, try and call a senator on the phone and see how that works for you, Jesse.
Yeah. But then after that, right, if they're not as transparent as I would have liked them to be, obviously I would, and if they're running for re-election, I would have my answer, or at least on that part of accountability, transparency, and all that stuff that you would hope to look for as when you go into the voting booth.
That's a good point, Jesse.
You have three, like you said on your site, or you mentioned about transparency, accountability, and I forgot the last one, but
transparency, frugality, priority.
Frugality, yeah. So if voters have that in their mind as they go to the booth and say, hey, so and so hasn't met the three, maybe I shouldn't vote for them. I think that's what most voters should their approach should take moving forward in the future, because we've been doing this for the past 20, I've been at least decades already, and you should have those three things in mind, or most people should, when they're going to vote.
I agree, Jesse.
That's what I feel,
You're
and
right.
Not just in Guam, but I think even in America, or just everywhere, anywhere that where voting takes place. You know what I mean? People should remember those three things when they go to the booth, and you can't just sit back and expect these people to move. You have to participate as well and do your civic duty as a citizen, and participate by calling, by attending these public hearings and those kind of things. So
That's what.
I hope that's the direction that the people of Guam start doing, because we can't keep just blaming these people. You know, we have to, at some point we have to take accountability ourselves as citizens and you know, remember those three things when you're going to vote.
Well, it worked for me, Jesse.
Yeah. But again, you know, I guess, you know, sad that, you know, it's unfortunate that most people are you know, they can't. We're not all built the same, but hopefully maybe some people can do that. And it's such an easy thing, especially you were doing that like almost 20 years ago.
That's right.
And technology has evolved since then, so I don't see why anyone doesn't. You know, I don't see why they don't put that stuff. And not just the senators. I don't think every government agency should have something like that, where you can track every dollar that's spent. You know, if it's public money, everything should have. Every agency should have a spreadsheet of all the expenses and everything that they did for the year or they did quarterly. You know, and then that way people can really see what's going on. You know.
I'm for that, Jesse.
But apparently that just probably won't happen because politics and everything that's involved. But anyways, I just wanted to ask you about that. If it's that easy to go in there and
it should be that easy.
Oh, okay. All right, thanks. Have a good day.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. So here we are. We're at the tough part of the week, the end of the week, the last tall tales for this week. Doggone it all. The real Joe Cruz and I are going to suffer through the whole weekend, but we'll be back 1600 on Monday. See you then.